Welcome to Business Talk, presented in collaboration with the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, from the heart of southeastern Ohio at the University of Rio Grande TV studio. Our goals are simple: promote the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, as well as advocate local small business and their support organizations. More importantly, promote southeastern Ohio as a wonderful place to live, explore, and learn. There are many different ways you can find us. The University of Rio Grande Cable Access Channel 17, live online at blogtalkradio.com, and on YouTube if you are unable to catch our show live. Introducing our co-hosts, Jason Winters, Mike Thompson, Patrick Dingle. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hey, welcome back to our show. It's really a really good day for TV shows because we have a fantastic guest that's going to be talking about what it takes to be on the radio and use social media and use the media services. He had his start in 1972, and he comes with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. Before we begin with this, Jason Winters asked to be excused today. He's taking care of some personal items, but he'll be returning next week along with myself in hosting the show. Today we have Sam McKibben. Sam McKibben is the news director at WNXT Mix 93, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And then at 2 o'clock, Sam is going to be reversing roles for a minute, and he's going to be talking with Mike Thompson, who's the director with the communications department at the University of Rio Grande. And they're going to be talking about the importance of students choosing a career in the communication field. And then at 3 o'clock, we have one of our deans, Dr. Donna Mitchell. Dr. Donna Mitchell is going to be congratulating the nursing students that have graduated. There's a few individuals that have acquired awards in their program. So we hope that you will continue listening, and we do appreciate your listening on our channels, etc. So let me start by saying I've known Sam for a number of years. Sam was very kind enough to ask me to come on to one of his radio stations in which we talked about various different things related to small businesses. In Business Talk, we try to have interesting topics that discuss ways in which businesses can be more financially stable and more able to use their money to the best of their advantage. And advertisement is extremely important. But more importantly, Sam has been involved with a variety of different aspects in the radio and the broadcasting and the communication. He's been a teacher, he's been a director, he's been a friend to many individuals, and he loves the media services. So, Sam, I want to welcome you to our program.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate it.
And what I'd like for you to do is talk with the listening audience a little bit about how you got your start and your involvement in the broadcasting communications programs.
I'll be glad to. I graduated from high school at 18, like most of us do, and went into the military.
18, I remember that.
Yes. And I've tried a couple of times to get into broadcasting via the military route, but that wasn't available to me at the time, so I went ahead and went to the Air Force. Now, I did get involved in civilian broadcasting when I was about almost 20. And that was in Louisiana, KAOK, your OK station.
KAOK.
Lake Charles, Louisiana, down Cajun country. And they offered me a job to stay there. My Air Force service ended, and I decided to come back home and to Portsmouth, Ohio, and got into radio broadcasting then. Stayed in the military the entire time. At one point, I was called back in the service in 1985 as a Navy journalist, basically, and served 4 more years. And we had just a wonderful time, really, in doing military and civilian broadcasting. I've enjoyed that for over 40 years now.
40 years. And I know that you're working with some really good people at your radio station.
We are.
They
We
come
have
with
some
backgrounds.
We have some real pros. Basically, we have Steve Hayes, a broadcaster, who's been with us for a long time. In my generation, and even the younger generation, many broadcasters began when they were 13, 14 years old. I was 19 before I got in the business.
Wow, so you're an oldie.
I was late getting started, yes. That's probably no longer true. In those days, radio jobs were much more prevalent than they are today. There were many more stations. In 1978, the Congress, in its wisdom, or maybe not, deregulated both broadcasting and the airlines. And to me, that basically just kind of really kind of watered down the entire profession.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I noticed that the audiences only see the end results, and that's either the picture or they only listen. But there's a lot of work behind the scenes.
Oh yes. Well, my field is in news. I've been in news mainly since 1972. I was back in the service for 4 years, as I mentioned, but basically it's been a career of over 40 years in broadcasting. And yes, from going to get the story to basically develop, write the story, edit the story, change it as need be, update it as situations change. The news business never quits. And of course, we do news 24 hours a day on all 3 stations.
And I noticed, I listen late at night while trying to fall asleep. So in essence, your soothing voice sort of puts me to sleep.
Well, thank heavens. We do our news live probably till around noon, 1 o'clock, and after that they let us do the recording of the rest of the day.
Right.
So we put that on to our media touch system, and that goes throughout the system. And all 3 stations are 24 hours. Most radio stations and television are 24 hours now. Used to be you signed off at midnight, came back on at 5:30 or 6. Well, that's radio yesterday.
Huh. Hey, and I know that you have several FM stations, and you have an AM station.
Yep, we have 8 altogether. 5 are in Kentucky and 3 are in Ohio.
And the AM station is the lone AM station?
We are now, yes. Yeah,
okay.
We are, yes. The other station went off the air about 3 years ago, and we're the last of the Mohicans. 1260 on the AM dial. We've been there since 1951.
And that's sort of a sports.
We're sports talk.
Sports talk. And do you ever have sports like baseball or?
About 150 local games a year.
Oh, okay. All right.
Plus the Reds, plus the Buckeyes, plus the Blue Jackets.
The Buckeyes probably are our favorite,
especially this year.
Yes, because everyone loves a winner.
Absolutely. Go Bucks.
Yeah, yes, I agree. But there's so much work behind it. And it's interesting. You have seen us come from limited technology to a lot of technology.
Yes.
And I'll never forget this one time when I was involved with the education and part of my computer business, et cetera, back then. You were your station was trying to hook up to where you could leave and it would go through pre-recording. But the problem was that the technology of computer systems required it to be totally 100% accurate.
Yes.
And if a computer system loses a second, all of the different synchronization of the different programs.
You're basically dead in the water.
You're dead in the water. And it was interesting how you were able to resolve that. Because I don't know if listening audience, if you turn on a radio station and it has dead space for more than 5-6 seconds, what do we do?
That's an eternity. You do something.
Yes.
Give a station break or something.
Yes. And if there's no one there, then what you do is you switch the channels.
Absolutely.
And
dead air is a killer.
Yes. And so you have seen a tremendous amount of technology changes.
Oh, yes.
But
when I went to WIMA in Lima in 1972, I went in to get my tape recorder to go out to cover a news event, and the engineer brought it in. He said, "Here it is, Sam. It was a wallet sack you strap on your back." And from that, we now go to this. So that's technology. Thank heavens, you don't have to strap this on your back anymore.
Well, and if you had one of those first phones that came out, you would have a front pack,
Absolutely,
too.
yes, yeah. Everything from the news business to sports business to advertising. You know, we take a commercial out to an advertiser like this, or you go get a news story like this. I was city council last night. I got everything on the city council on this little thing right here.
Wow. Wow.
3 hours.
And it's amazing how the technology has really helped you in your job.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is just the start of many, many things. I'll be retiring probably in another year or two, but
no, you don't need to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Need to.
I'll tell my boss. Pat wants me to stay on. But the technology has been wonderful. And again, some people, I know we have a couple of people in our employ who are so, even at this point, I'll tell one of my sports director, I said, look it up, go ahead and Google it on the internet. What's Google? And I said, come on, Roger. Some people are just so resistant too. He's younger than I am.
Well, sometimes it can be a little scary.
Well, I guess it can, but I mean, it's part of now, just part of doing your job.
Well, it used to be that the old saying about older people were afraid of change and afraid of the technology. But as we younger people have become more mature in our age, we are not afraid of the technology.
Well,
And
if that's the only way to do your job, then
That's
you
right.
better learn how to do your job.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And there's one skill though, or one ability that in the radio and the TV market that is really needed, and that's people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. People are the quantity that'll never be replaced.
Right. And if you can think, if you're able to share information, if you're able to communicate, your job really doesn't change.
Well, it changes the way you do your job, but as far as the end product about delivering the news or the sports or the weather, whatever it happens to be, that hasn't changed since radio began.
Right.
It's still you're talking to one person basically. You and I are talking between us.
Right.
We're exchanging ideas.
Right.
And that we may be reaching, 100, 200, 300, 400 people, but it's still just one person talking to one person.
You're absolutely right. And there's a lot of times we feel that when the camera lights come on or the radio light comes on, etc., we have to change into something else. And really,
No,
you have to be yourself.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
And I noticed, at our 2:00 show, Mike and you are going to talk about what it takes to get involved in a communications program and things of that nature. I myself feel that everyone should experience once to be on radio or TV.
Oh, I think so. You know how Paul Harvey got started in radio in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Nope.
He volunteered to sweep the studio out for about 2 years.
Wow.
One thing led to another. He got to sweep out the big studio. That's how you get started. I just kept knocking on doors till finally somebody said, "Oh, we're getting tired of looking at you. I'm gonna put you on weekends when I don't work." So I got Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I understand. Well, many students have many people that are graduating from high school and college sometimes feel that they should start at the top.
Oh yes.
And when in reality, sometimes you have to sweep the floors.
You often do. That
Yeah.
was part of my duties on the weekends at the station down in Louisiana was, just making sure that the coffee was ready for the morning DJ the next morning, making sure all the programs were ready for him. Part of my job was preparing for the next shift.
Yeah.
And that's still I still try to do that today. That's kind of a lost art anymore. But,
So
try to
is that why
prepare.
you asked us if we wanted coffee?
I think so, yes. Plus I love coffee.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Let's talk a little bit about
Yes.
Radios in general. The difference between AM and FM. When AM was the only station that really came on. Is that correct?
Amplitude modulation, yes.
And I know that when it first started, they selected key stations throughout the United States to do 50,000 watts.
12 of them.
And that was meant so that way, if we ever got into disasters
Yes.
or those stations would be able to
Most of those stations also came on. WLW is a good example.
Yeah.
They came on at 4 o'clock in the morning with basically farm prices.
Huh.
And that was so the farmers would know what crops to take to market that day or wait till the next day.
Huh.
Now, LW still does that in Cincinnati.
Son of a gun.
Yeah. Those 12 stations were all 50,000 watt.
The hog report.
Yeah, absolutely. Pork bellies, the whole thing.
Huh.
Those 12 stations are still on the air, and there are no other stations at that frequency. KDKA in Pittsburgh, 1120, WLW at 700, WOAI in San Antonio. There's 9 more besides those, and they cover the country.
Well, Portsmouth used to have a 50,000 watt channel.
We did.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
WPAY.
Well, actually, at one time they were 100,000.
And 100,000.
Yeah, they were.
I know that when I would listen on my FM radio,
Yes.
it sort of bled through.
Yes, it
And
does.
wherever I would move the dial,
Yeah. Their tower came down twice over in
Yeah.
Springville Hill over in
Yeah.
Kentucky. The first time a tornado blew it down. The second time in the ice storm of 2003,
Yeah, I remember
it
that.
fell down.
yeah.
Now, when they put it back up, it probably is about 50,000 now. Now, that's
Okay.
owned, they sold it to Northern Kentucky University.
Oh, okay.
That's WNKE now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, PAY
All right.
does not exist anymore.
Right. So I know that AM was extremely important in the start of the.
That's all there was.
Yeah.
FM was, I think we got our first FM there at NXT in 1964. Now, PAY dated
64.
to 48.
48.
But very early, very early. PAY AM went on in 1935. So if it was still with us, it would be, 81 years old, is that right?
Well, if you look at the portable radios, I remember in growing up when I was about 14, 15 years old, my sister got the first, or we got this fangled thing. It was a portable radio.
Yeah, like a wireless?
Yeah. And it was interesting. She would be able to pick up AM stations.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And so before that time, before the portable radios, mainly people listened to the radio like they watched TV.
That's right.
And that was
Well, the early stations, in AM radio at night would frequently, like KMOX in St. Louis, WGN in Chicago, the ones I mentioned before, KDKA, they would do they would do big band remotes. They would take you to Valleydale in Columbus or to Moonlight Garden in Cincinnati, and you would hear whatever band was featured that night. And they would do those broadcasts. That went on for about 15 years, probably up till about World War II, and after that everything kind of changed.
and so when FM came on, and with the portable radios and the different things, that sort of changed the.
Well, FM is a great vehicle. FM, of course, frequency modulation. FM is not affected as much. Well, it's not affected at all.
By the weather?
Hardly any by the weather. That's why your FM sound on a television station, or that's why your TV sound is FM.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's because you don't get the interference that you do with AM.
Oh, okay.
They tried both, and FM worked a lot better. So, and FM is, AM is what you call amplitude modulation. You'll get a little skip with that. Sometimes you can hear a station, NXT at 5,000 watts is like a local station in downtown Lexington, Kentucky, because we're directional to the southwest.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's the way it was set up in 1951. The FM is more or less line of sight,
Right.
more or less circular, kind of like an amoeba,
Right.
that type pattern.
And I know that the FCC, the Federal Communications.
They're the boss.
And so they sort of help to determine that one station doesn't bleed over to another station.
Well, there are, on the FM side, you have at least 10 points or 10 numbers between. You have 540. The FM or the AM dial runs from 550 AM to 1600 AM.
Okay.
The FM dial from 88.1 up until 108. So that's where that's the parameters.
I
All
see.
stations have to be within those ranges.
Right, right. And so as the radio has matured, your stations now go on the internet.
Oh, yes.
I think that's great.
Well, it's a way of doing business.
Yeah.
We have WNXT Radio, WNXTRadio.com, and I think you've been showing us pictures of there before we went on the air. And we have the one website, and basically you can hear that, as you well know, anywhere in the world.
Yep. Yes.
We get listeners in the military, families from Guam, Okinawa, Japan, Germany.
Right.
You know, they'll send us letters all the time.
Right.
During the Iraq and Afghanistan buildups, we got letters from letters too. We also got again internet hits and contacts from listeners in those countries.
And another thing that we were talking earlier, you have sort of a hybrid format. You have a talk, different talk discussion shows, and then you in other times will bring in different.
We do.
Listening.
We still do some live talk shows. That is kind of a dinosaur in the business nowadays. But we have a lady that does a talk show from 8 to 9 every morning, Barb Pratt.
Yep.
And then I do public affairs shows. Mine are primarily all taped, and then I run them back later. They're evergreen. You can use them as much as you want to.
And you have, of course, Steve Hayes in the early morning, in which he has.
The mix format is basically just that. It's a mix of hits from even going back, some of them back to the 60s, all the way through today. The FM radio, the Breeze 107.5 is classic rock. That's basically AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, and some of the groups that were really, really big, big groups. So those mainly hits from classic rock days.
And so on those radio stations, everything is powered by advertisement.
Oh, yes.
And so if someone were to get into the broadcasting area, I would assume that it's just not sitting in this chair talking. There's a lot of behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Yeah, with advertising, it's getting out there to see the people. We do a lot by phone because it's more handy. Some advertisers we get are far, far away. They like our FM stations particularly, and they will advertise with us, but sometimes a lot of it is done by phone, is done by the internet, is done with websites, and is done by email. We do an awful lot by that. There's still some personal contact, but I'd say, maybe a half of our advertising is sold by face-to-face like this. The rest is all on the phone, all the other media.
And so when you do the advertisement, as the personalities, do you pretty much have a good idea how to get their message across, or do you find that the advertisers have their own ideas and you sort of, how does that work?
A lot of times you will have, like, if somebody says, I know Sam McKibben, and he's been with the radio station for a long time, and they'll buy advertising from me or on one of my programs, and I'll leave the business or talk to them on the phone and say, well, thanks for the business. And then they will say, oh, by the way, what station are you with now? Because mainly they're buying the person. They're buying the personality.
That's true.
The station is almost secondary.
Yeah.
Now, our late morning man, Zeke Mullins, was like that for years. He sold advertising for 50 years. He sold everything. And he just absolutely, people would always say, because he changed around a lot. He would say, well, I'm with this station. Oh, well, whichever one you're with, I know you'll do a good job for me.
Yeah. So really, what you're saying is that to get into the communications,
yes,
you have to, first of all, be able to speak well.
Oh, yeah.
You have to be able to write well.
Yes.
But more importantly, you have to be of a personality that people trust.
Well, an advertiser usually they've got an image they want to portray, and they want you to basically do that for them. And I'd like to say, well, we don't sell the steak, we sell the sizzle.
That's true. I've heard you say that a number of different times.
Yeah, I didn't realize I said it that much. But it's true. You're trying to portray that image. And if they're a car dealer, if they're a restaurant, if they're a car wash, if they sell lumber on the side, if they sell hot dogs down on 2nd Street, you want to say that, if you want the best hot dog on 2nd Street, you want to go to the Dairy Queen. If you want to go to Glockner's to get your next car or truck,
Right.
That's, we don't have that many of each individual advertiser anymore, so that's why we do that.
That's interesting. There is one car dealership I remember in Portsmouth that when you would bring your car in for a repair or something of that nature, the very first thing they would do is turn on your radio to see what station to listen to. And I don't know if that's still prevalent today.
Sometimes people will buy a car and they will check the stations first. If they're all rock and roll stations, they won't buy the car because they know some kids had the car.
That's interesting.
If they're all adult stations, like NXT and LW say, well, if some adult drove that, so it's probably a good car.
Interesting.
I'm not sure if that's tried or true or not.
Well, oftentimes when we do buy advertisement, there's about 16, 17 different ways to buy advertisement. We have to rely upon what the individual
Yes.
tells us, because people want the best service for the amount of money that they pay.
And you can't always tell a book by its cover.
That's true.
Which you know.
Yeah.
If somebody comes into your dealership to buy a car, then you may want to make sure that that person, treat the person with respect, first of all.
Okay.
They might not be wearing a suit or a tie, but could be a farmer that has 500 acres out on Route 23
That's true.
and plants soybeans every year and makes $1 million a year.
That's true.
So, always just kind of be fair with people. I just like to respect everybody, and I assume most people
think,
will turn that around to you.
Oh, well, I think you've more than proved that. We have only a few more seconds. We'll have to wait until you come back to talk about your amusing stories. But
I have a number of those.
Well, then you have to come back.
Some of them are even true.
But is there anything that you'd like to share to the listening audience? As far as being in the radio, broadcasting, some words to live by.
As I told you and Mike over lunch a little while ago, this business has been so good to me. When my late wife and I were married 45 years, she was first of all, find yourself a good helpmate.
Yeah.
Enjoy what you do. Try to have a little fun on the way. Join a good church. Try to keep your weight down.
Well, with the technicians,
Well, I know that, yes, and I'm fighting that. I'm still trying to get the Nobel Prize myself, but it's really just enjoy what you do.
Yeah,
Life is
that's
short.
true. That is
and
true.
You just want to make sure you enjoy yourself. Treat your family well. Treat everybody well. If you treat everybody well, the golden rule is not a bad thing to follow.
Well,
and people usually will turn that around on you. They'll say, I guess all I can say to close out is no good deed goes unpunished.
That is true. That is true. Hey, we're talking with Sam McKibben.
Been a pleasure.
What is it?
Been a pleasure.
Oh, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and you have to come back.
Yes.
Sam is the news director at WNXT, Mix 99.3 on your FM radio dial.
And Classic Rock 107.5.
Upcoming next will be Mike Thompson. Mike Thompson and Sam McKibben are going to talk about the importance of getting into communications. I'm Patrick.
I'm Sam.
Thank you.